Hello, yes, I'm Ben. I'm part of the church here at Abbey. I'm going to talk for 10 to 15 minutes, apparently, or else. And we've got a bit of time to discuss afterwards, so I'll try and rattle through the bits that I want to say at you, and then hopefully there'll be plenty of time for us to say things to each other afterwards if we want that. I've been asked to give a bit of an introduction to the book of Mark, because over the next few weeks on the Thursday nights we're going to be looking at that book, and people will dig into different sections of it, and there'll be chances to read passages of Mark together more closely in the coming weeks. So I'm sort of trying to answer the question of what is Mark. I'm going to have to keep pointing at Chris for 10 minutes. There we go, look at that. Amazing, it's my favourite remote control. What is Mark? Well, more specifically, I suppose, more immediately, what should I do with Mark? Is what I'm going to talk about for 10 minutes, because in one sense, it's very easy to answer the question, what is Mark? You can see it right here. It's a book. And what should you do with it? You should read it. That's the easy answer. But I want to put the emphasis there on the you bit of this. You should read it, both you individually and you as a group of people. It's one of the things that really, I don't know, it's like a pet peeve of mine, is you hear a lot of talk about the Bible and the stuff in it, and sometimes it comes from people who aren't even looking at it for themselves. And we kind of just wave it around shut, rather than actually digging into it. And so I want to give 10 minutes to try and prime you for the next few weeks of how you can read the Bible and bring yourself to it, both individually and collectively. So I'm going to give you two things to take the handbrake off and two little brake checks. Okay, I want you to use your intuition, yourself, your personal vibe and reaction to this book as you're reading it. And so I'm going to give you two things that I hope help you feel like I can just go wherever I want with this, anything I feel like, to try and take that handbrake off, because I think sometimes we feel like we have to be very pious and holy and constrained because it's the Bible and it's big and important, and I want to take that handbrake off. But then I do want to put two little slight brake checks on it as well, so that we don't just careen completely off the road. Handbrake release number one. I really want to get your reaction. When you're looking at the book of Mark, I really want you to bring your honest reaction to things. Or to put it another way, don't outsource your brain. Don't let somebody else decide what this book says for you and just say, oh, you know, Mark 4, it says this thing, therefore you need to behave this way, the end. Don't even look at it. Don't outsource your brain, don't let somebody else decide for you. You go and you look at it and you have your own reaction to it. And there are no stupid questions, there are no stupid first impressions, and there are no stupid feelings when it comes to those things. Be totally honest. If your first reaction when you look at a little bit of this book is, I have no idea what that is on about, that's a perfect first honest reaction. If your first take is, I don't know what this word means, somebody tell me what this word means, that's a perfectly good question. That's not a stupid question, that's a brilliant question. If your feeling is, that makes me feel angry, that seems wrong, that feels outdated, I don't like that, that's a perfectly valid first reaction and first feeling. That might not stay your feeling or your impression or your question forever, but as you know, I want to hear what your honest first starting points are with these things. If it reassures you, I'm married to someone who's doing a PhD in theology at the moment, and if you want to fast track to sounding like somebody who really knows what they're talking about in theology, some of these things will get you straight there. If you just have a really raw and honest reaction to the text, you will often unlock something about this story that other people are a bit too shy or too scared to say, and you can sound like a fast track to a theology degree. So that's the first thing, make sure you bring your honest reaction to it. The second thing, to hopefully help give you some freedom and a bit of play even with it, is I want to talk a little bit about genre. And all that means is, you've seen a book before, you've had communication before in written or spoken form, and so even if you don't read very often, I don't read very often, it's terrible, I used to read loads, now I basically only read football subreddits on the internet and nothing else. I read about one book a year, it's terrible. But even people who don't read anything, like me, know some vague things about a book, and you have a vague sense about how communication works. And so I just want to do a quick little experiment to kind of prove this point. But in the same way, you can bring your own response to what sort of story you think this is. Okay, so here we go. I mean, if someone's feeling brave, you can come and have a go at reading this. But if I show you this, what sort of text do you think it sort of vaguely looks like? Anybody? What sort of thing? Instructions. Okay, instructions, that's interesting. If I read it like this, unpacking, remove the machine from its packaging, close to the final location of the machine. Step one, right? We could go like this. This, to me, looks like a poem, right? And you read poems with this kind of slowness, and you're supposed to have like a turtleneck and a beret on, and it's all very like, you're searching for deep meaning in these words. But Sarah has correctly seen straight through it. It's not a poem. No, it's perfect. Let's go on. It's not a poem. It is, of course, originally. Let's jump to the next one, Chris. There we go. Steps from a washing machine instruction manual. But you read a washing machine instruction manual very differently to how you read a poem. The sort of things you're trying to get out of a washing machine instruction manual are different than the sort of things you're trying to get out of a poem. A poem's trying to tap into your feelings. A washing machine instruction manual is trying to tap into your plumbing, right? You're trying to get guidance from one, and you're trying to get emotions from the other. For example, very top line. Let's have another quick example. Okay, what's this? What does that look like to you? If you had to guess what sort of book that was in?
Kids book.
Kids book, right. If you read it like a kid's book, this is the employer. This is the employee. What else have we got in the kids book? The employee and the employer wish to enter into an employment agreement. It's quite a sexist kids book. The employer shall have an opportunity to assess the performance, attitude, skills, and other employment-related attributes and characteristics of the employee. Right? The employee, what's going to happen to them? They'll have an opportunity to learn about both the employer and the position of employment. There's a twist in the tale at the end of this kid's book. Right? But you read a kid's book with a very different tone of your voice, but an outlook. You're looking for different things from a kid's book. It works in a different way to what these words actually are, obviously, which is, if we go on, a contract. Right? And so when it's written like this, here's the employer, here's the employee, the employment of the employee should commence from here, the parties agree that the employer shall have an opportunity, right? What a contract is doing is very different than what a kid's book is doing. And so the type of thing that you are reading changes how you read it. So when you look at this book, I want you to get your own feeling about what sort of thing is this that I'm looking at? Is this a poem? Is this a washing machine instruction manual? Is this a contract? Is this a kid's book? Is this a story? Is this a film? Is it a play? Is it a song? And how does it sound different depending on what my answer to those things is? Okay, so there's two things where I want you to be as free as possible to bring whatever response you have to this text. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Okay, and then two very quick things that might let people tell you a little bit otherwise. And then we'll do it with some actual text from Mark in a second. Let's keep going, Chris, because I'm going to run out of time otherwise. Okay, first thing to give you a little bit of pause, I do think, no matter what else you think the book of Mark is, whether you decide that it is a kid's book and a contract and a song or whatever else, I think it is hard to disagree that it is a biography. It is a story about a person. And so pretty much all the way through, at any point, no matter which bit of it you're reading, I think the person, Mark, is trying to say something about who Jesus was and why Jesus was significant. And so if at any point you get to it and you're like, I don't know how to make any sense of this, I don't care about this, it's boring, I don't understand it, you can always put those two questions onto it. Why is this story in here? What is it telling me about who Jesus was or why Jesus was significant? Right? So for example, if I was making a biography of my life, I think I might put in the story about the suit that I wore on my first day of college, And I think I might not put in the story about the time I went to the White House. Even though one of those sounds like it's a lot more important and exciting than the other one of those was a lot more formative to who I am. And so at any point in this story, you can stop and you can ask, why is this in here to tell me about who Jesus is as a person and why that is important? Okay, and so you might have any reaction you like to these things. You might be like, this is a heavy metal comedy parody song about the future of nanobots. That's what the Book of Mark is. Great, go for it. I love that wild, open interpretation. But also, in your heavy metal song about nanobots, there's probably still going to be something about who Jesus was and why Jesus was significant. And then the second thing, just to give us a little bit of guardrails, I can't remember what I put, Chris, help me out. What's the next one? That's all right, that's me being slow. Right, context, that's the other thing. So I want you to use your intuition, I want you to use your gut reaction, I want you to bring your honest self to these stories and have a visceral sense of them. But there are some things that you can't just get to by intuition, right? And there are some things that you need a little bit of background information, or there's just data that you don't have access to, right? And so for helping with that, it's really good to ask other people, to confer between each other, to investigate, to go look it up online or read some stuff, talk to other people, try and dig out answers for yourself. So just to give you a quick example, if I told you a story like, there's a friend of mine who the other weekend, they got completely off their face, they went down to Ashton Gate wearing a fully blue and white kit, and in the middle of a Saturday afternoon they stood there and they belted out "Good Night Irene" in the middle of the home end. You probably can tell me some things about that story. You know that's probably not a very good idea, right? But that's because you know that Ashton Gate, well, you may not know this, I don't think Carolyn knows all of this. Ashton Gate is home to Bristol City, not Bristol Rovers. Bristol Rovers play in a blue and white kit, Bristol City play in a red kit. Good Night Irene is a Bristol Rovers song, not a Bristol City song. The home end means the stand where the fans stand, and getting off your face is a contemporary phrase that means getting really drunk. Right? If you don't know any of those bits of information, that story doesn't mean very much to you. But if you know all those bits of information, then you can have a fuller reaction to it. There will be things in the Book of Mark that are like that story, where there's people or characters or situations or contexts or significant things happening that just aren't immediately obvious to us, that represent stuff to the audience who it was written for, so mostly Jewish people in the 1st century, that don't immediately make sense to us. That's okay, that doesn't mean we can't make any sense out of it. It just means that sometimes it's good to go and do a bit more work to investigate what is going on with any part of the story. That's it. That's about 10 minutes, right? Yeah, the most important thing that I want to leave with you is, as over the next few weeks we work through this text, and we might do a bit of it now, bring your own self to it. Bring your own reactions. We can help together to put those checks on it, to ask those questions of it, to find out that extra information we need. But what I really don't want to go missing is, what do you actually honestly think to this? When I do Sunday school with the teenagers in there every now and again, one of my key rules to them is, I want to hear your real answer, not what you think the right answer is. Don't just sit there and go, well, Jesus seems terribly nice because that's what I'm supposed to say. What do you actually think? What do you actually think of what is going on here? Last thought before I shut up. It's a very tiny book, and it's also a very, very fast book. You'll find if you start reading it, there's no pausing in Mark. He's just like, first this happened, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened, and then you finish the whole book in one toilet break. So it is okay with Mark to slow down and take your time over just 1 or 2 sentences at a time, because it's so fast-paced, there's a lot to dig into in each line. That's it. We've got a little bit of time to talk. I've got some suggestions here in case you all go silent on me, because I can't stand that. But yeah, is that helpful? Okay, there we go, I'm done.
Can you read out the...
Yes. So, we've got maybe 10 or 15 minutes to chat now. I think it could be interesting to look at one of the stories and use some of those things I've just talked about to respond to it. But first of all, is there anything anyone immediately wants to ask me about any of that stuff I've just thrown at you? Second of all, is there anything you already know you want to ask about reading Mark? Is there anything that already confuses you about the idea of the gospel or the Bible? And then I've got 4 little practice exercises to use those techniques I was talking about if we want to do a worked example. Anyone got any questions?